Hey guys, welcome back to Ashley's Homestead Adventures. Today I am going to talk to you about, in my opinion, what the top 5 homesteading challenges are. And so this is just an informational video. We're going to talk while we work. I'm in the kitchen. It's my day off, so I've got bread to start making. And I just kind of thought I would talk to you while I was in the kitchen making bread about what our top 5 homesteading challenges have been, and just to give you just an opinion, just a information if you're out there thinking about, going out and building a homestead, if you're thinking about changing your way of life to homesteading, if you're just wondering what are the challenges, because so much of the time everything that we see online is just all of the beautiful stuff, and even some of the work and the tasks and the jobs and all of that. To some of you that is beautiful because it's not it's not something that you do on a daily basis. To some of you, scooping poop, and actually to me too, is a beautiful thing. However, there is a lot of work that goes into this life that a lot of people don't know. They don't realize, or they don't understand. So I am just going to give you 5 things, 5 categories really, and they're going to have some branches off of the categories while I make some bread this morning. Okay, so this is what we're doing. We're doing the discard loaf. This is the recipe, so you guys kind of know what I'm doing. So the first thing on my list of things to talk about, which is really important, is fencing. And the reason why I say it's really important is because many of you are like me, and you're getting into a larger farm. I had already started, Jess from Roots and Refuge says turn your waiting room into a classroom. I had already started incorporating some more homesteading things into my life while I was in Oregon, before we bought my dream mini farm here in north central Arkansas. I am exactly 2 years ago yesterday that I came here full time. We bought this farm in 2021, but I didn't get here full time until 2022, October 20th. So I am 2 years on this farm, and we had to start completely over with basically the fencing. There's going to be a lot of different side branches on this because I struggle really hard to just stick to 5 things. It's like pick what you want off the menu. How do you only choose, one? Come on. But, one of the reasons why we chose this farm is because it actually had a lot of the perimeter fencing. It was probably 75% fenced on the perimeter, which was a big deal to us, knowing that we have livestock. But it was one of the things, all the cross fencing, a lot of pasture fencing and things like that, we needed to build. One of the things that you need to consider when you get your new farm, or when you're building a homestead and decide that you want to have livestock animals, is fencing. That's the most. How are you going to keep these animals in? And here is a very interesting tidbit of information that us livestock owners know, and there's a reason why we panic when our animals get out. If for whatever reason your animal gets out, say you have a horse or a cow, if they get out and get on the road and somebody hits them, it is not the driver's fault. You're responsible because your animals should have been on your property. So you're responsible for any medical bills, for any, for anything that happens in that accident, because your cow should not have been on that road, or your horse should not have been on that road. So knowing the proper strength, the proper type of fencing, not only do you want to make sure that you can keep your animals in, you also want to make sure that the fencing that you're using is safe, you know, or the safest. Now, I always say that, you know, every time you try to go out of town, your animals are going to try to kill themselves. Animals just do that. You know, it never fails. They find a way. I have seen things in my entire life of owning animals. I mean, interesting fact, I am 40 years old. I'm pushing 41, and I have never in my life been without a horse or a dog. So, I mean, I've seen some things that are just freak accidents that there ain't nothing you can do to control them. However, we can do the best that we can. One of those things, you know, for us was a lot of people, if you're going to have cattle, you're going to use barbed wire because, you know, cattle are hard on fences. Let's just face it. They're hard on fences. But we have horses, and barbed wire for horses is a nightmare. I have seen, as far as fencing goes, I've seen more barbed wire kill horses than any other fencing. And I've seen a lot of horses cast on walls. I've seen a lot of horses stuck in panels. You know, I've seen horses wrapped in smooth wire. Barbed wire has been, as far as fencing goes, for a killer for horses, it's been the number one. I'll save you the stories. A cattle panel or a goat panel is going to work for calves, but once your cow gets big enough to push on them, it's not going to work for them. We use square fencing. A lot of people call it, you know, horse fencing. You know, it's basically like I want to say a 4x6, maybe it's a 6x6 square fencing. That's what we use. That's what we like for our horses. Now, it can be a nightmare with goats with horns. You might not ever see goats on my homestead, but you're more liable to see sheep back on my homestead than goats, but you won't see goats with horns, and that is why but that's one of the reasons why they get their heads stuck in everything. And this square fencing that we have chosen that works good for our cow, but is also much safer for our horses, is terrible with goats because they get their heads stuck because they just can't stay where they're supposed to. So you've got your kind of fencing. You need to, you know, the kind of gates that you're going to have, and how many gates do you want to have? You know, where are you going to put your fencing? Where are you going to put your gates? I mean, you've got to kind of have an idea or a plan of how you want your homestead to operate. You know, is it rotational grazing? Are you going to have dry lots? Are you, you know, just going to have one great big pasture? So that you know, and are you going to be moving horses where you're going to be haltering them, or are you going to be moving cattle? Or sheep where it's easier to herd them? Is gates in between pastures a good idea, or you just want to have one big alleyway with gates in it? You know, there's a lot of different things that go into it. Mr. Wonderful and I tend to really like the alley concept, and that's because it's pretty easy to, you know, maybe with a little extra fencing, it's pretty easy to herd just about anything down the alley. But also it makes it really easy to feed. You know, we can kind of walk down one alleyway and feed every pasture. We kind of like that concept. That's what works for us as horse people. You know, now, and I will fully admit, most homesteads, and Joe Salatin will say, the worst animal for a homestead is a horse. And that is very, very true. They're terrible on ground. They tear up the ground really bad. Horses will eat down to the dirt. They'll actually rip the roots out. You know, where cows generally, they say that cows need 4 to 5 inches tall grass in order to graze properly, because they grab it with their tongue and then rip it off. And a lot of times a cow will graze a pasture to about 2 to 3 inches tall if you're letting them graze it all the way down. Horses they'll graze it to the dirt. Rabbit hole. But alas, we have we have a lot of horses. We have 5 horses. It's just the circumstances of our life. And we love our ponies, and a lot of them are senior, very senior. I mean, I've got 2 30-year-old horses in the barn, for crying out loud. So very senior horses, and that is just, it is what it is. It's what our homestead looks like right now. Is it going to change? Yes. But right now it's horses. We arrange our farm around that. And the biggest thing about fencing is the planning and the cost. I mean, you got to figure out how much it's going to cost. Can you find fencing for, you know, on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or something that, you know, are you going to need to make do? I mean, there's places on my farm that you guys have seen that aren't completed. I mean, Mr. Wonderful did a beautiful job on my fencing last year, getting all my cross fences up, and it's just absolutely gorgeous, but we couldn't afford the gates. So we use hot wire for our gates, and it's, you know, and hog panels, or cattle panels, not hog panels. There's a difference. Hog panels are much shorter. And that's just the way, that's what was in our budget. And we were okay with that. It was like, well, we want to make sure that we don't skimp on the, you know, the braces and all of the important things of this fence, but we can go without gates for a season, and then, you know, maybe hopefully this winter we'll be able to save and buy for them. So that's the main things that I can think of, you know, right off the bat with fencing, which goes along with, you know, does your farm have shelters? You know, planning for your farm. There's a lot of things that go around that, but fencing and shelters seem to be the biggest cost. Now, I'm very fortunate. On my last farm, my husband actually built me a beautiful 5-stall barn with a tack room, and then of course this property, another thing that we, you know, really wanted to have on it already was a barn, and this one's got a, you know, like 125-foot barn, so it's an old chicken barn. So infrastructure, and what that's going to cost you, and how are you going to do it? Are you able to build the fences yourself? If it were just me and I didn't have a Mr. Wonderful, then the answer would be probably not. I would need to hire someone to do it. That gets really, really expensive. So just, you know, that's a big challenge and a big hurdle that needs to be thought about. Next thing on my list is land management, and one of the big challenges for us in this new property, you know, has been that we moved all the way across the country. You know, we basically moved from, you know, the West Coast to the, you know, eastern southern states, and there's a lot of trees and things that, weeds and stuff that don't grow here, and there's a lot of stuff that we're used to dealing with in Oregon that grow here. Learning what grows here, what trees you have on your property, you know, what's native, what's invasive, what, you know, those things are all a challenge. But here's what I will tell you on that. For the most part, in my experience, and that's just on this property, that kind of stuff it's challenging because it's overwhelming, but you can learn it over time. You know, there's, I don't know, I'm probably never gonna stop learning about invasive weeds. But are you going to rotationally graze? Or are you going to just have, you know, standalone or pastures permanent pastures that you know, you got your goats in one pasture, your cow in another pasture, and your horses in another pasture. And along with that, then are you going to treat with chemicals? Are you going to try to go all natural, and how are you going to do that? There's a lot of things that are available in certain parts of the country, and a lot of us are moving all the way across the country, which is why I'm saying this, that aren't on the other side of the country. As far as, you know, a lot of the fertilizers and the the natural remedies that were available, the resources that were available on one side of the country might not be readily available on the other side of the country. So there's that to consider. Are you, or are you just going to go through and spray with the pesticides that you've always used? How are you going to deal with the weed pressure and the pest pressure? And the pest pressure is especially important if you're not going to rotationally graze. Rotationally grazing really, really helps with that. But do you have the space to do that? Some people don't. We didn't at our last property. And so we had to deal, with the pest pressure differently than how we're doing it here. How are you going to deal with, the pest pressure in your gardens? And where are you going to put your gardens? For us, we have a hayfield at the very back of our property, and it just became something that I decided, or I found out I'm glad that it is where it is, because we are going to use some they're not necessarily chemical, but they are natural compounds that are reworked, and the compounds change and have chemical reactions on our hayfield for trying to think of what we're deficient in at the moment. Nitrogen. We're nitrogen deficient on our hayfield. And so Mr. Wonderful's kind of in charge of, there's certain things that he's in charge of on our property that I just give to his brain. He has got a much bigger capacity as far as what he can hold in his brain. The man's a genius. And I love him for that. So he's got certain things that he handles on our farm. Even when he's not here, I just call him and say, hey, what do you want to do? That way I don't have to make the decision. I don't have to, do the research. He's the one doing the research, and he can do that when he's not here. So our hayfield we are going to use something that is not 100% organic and natural. And it is on the complete opposite side of our farm as our garden is, which is very important to me. And so, I use neem oil, I use diatomaceous earth, and I use BT, Monterey BT in my garden. Those are my go-to pest pressure things. Soapy water. Those are my go-to things that I use in my garden for pest pressure. But those are things, land management is the category that I have this under. How are you going to manage your land to make it a better place when you leave this earth than how you found it? And that's how I look at it, and that's what I think is important. So there is that. That's my second category. My next category is a little bit more close to home, a little bit more personal. The next category has to do with food convenience, is what I call it. And not everybody chooses to dive this deep into homesteading, but it's one of those things where, how you see the memes and it's joking about, it's one guy talking to another husband, and he says, first thing your wife says is that, I think I want to get into sourdough. And the next thing you know, she says, I need 2 goats, a chicken coop, and 15 cases of canning jars. It's addicting. And once you start, for me, I have faced overweight. I have faced weight challenges my entire life. I have dived down every documentary, every weight loss management, whether it was a fad or whether it was factual documentaries and things like that. I've seen them all. Well, I probably haven't seen them all, but I read the back of labels. Are you a label reader? As you get into this lifestyle and you start growing your own food, and for me, homesteading it revolves around that. The heart of homesteading is growing your own food. Everybody goes, a different depth down that rabbit hole, if you will, as far as, what type of food you want to grow. Are you vegan? Are you vegetarian? Are you, Do you eat beef? Do you eat lamb? Do you eat goat? So, you know, for everybody, it looks a little bit different, but it is the heart of why we decide to be homesteaders and to live this lifestyle that is in a lot of ways less modern. It is more like our grandparents used to do it. It is it's closer to the earth. It's closer to the natural state of things, and a big portion of that is in our food, and eating healthier, being healthier, living longer. So part of homesteading for me, and part of my passion for me, I'm a foodie. Obviously, I love to eat, and so being a foodie and being somebody who loves to cook, loves to bake, and also having a husband who is a very good cook and who loves to try new things, and we consider ourselves to have very wide palates as far as what cuisines that we eat, and as far as our cooking. I mean, you guys have seen my pantry and our seasonings. We have hundreds of seasonings. So for us, cooking it's a big part of our life. In turn with that, as far as homesteading goes, you know, the food is the heart and the key link to, you know, why we are doing this life. The reason why it comes up on my challenges list is because for me it's a change of mindset, and it takes an active drive and an active want to change your mindset, and live this lifestyle to the fullest of what you want to live it to. Part of that is convenience of food. That's the first branch of this that I have. We're in rural America. A lot of times when you go out and you decide to buy property in the country and you want to start a farm or a homestead, conveniences go away. And so, we're 40 minutes, 30 minutes away from the closest Walmart. We don't have a grocery store anywhere close to us. It's at least 30 minutes to a grocery store. So there's no, let alone restaurants. And, we have a really good local cafe. We're blessed with that. But, there is not the food conveniences that you have in the city out here in rural America. And we knew that, and we were okay with that, because we wanted to, grow our own food. But you don't have tomatoes in January. Here, we can't grow broccoli in June. There's, seasonal eating becomes a part of it. And it's, you can still go to Dollar General and load up on, all of the boxed processed foods. And you can still have a homestead and fail at using what you're growing. And so it takes a mindset to, okay, I'm doing this life because I want to be healthier. And so I'm going to use what's coming out of the garden, which means that you need to get a little creative, even if you are a cook, which is one of the reasons why turn your waiting room into a classroom from Jess. That's part of the reason why she says that. If you're in an apartment or in a city just dreaming about having a great big garden or a farm, one thing that you can do is learn how to cook from scratch, because it comes in handy. And even for those of us who have been cooking from scratch for our entire lives, I mean, I've been cooking from scratch. I think the first batch of soup that I made, I was 8 years old. I've been cooking from scratch my whole life. I was blessed with a wonderful grandmother and grandfather that taught me how to cook from scratch. And it's even still a challenge. It's like, okay, I have broccoli, I have onions, I have garlic, I have lettuce. One of the big for me, one of the big mind boggles of trying to eat more seasonally, was lettuce doesn't grow in the summertime. You always want your lettuces in the summertime. You want something cool for lunch. And lettuce doesn't grow in the summertime. Not here. It grows in the winter. And salads in the winter just doesn't even sound appetizing. And that was a really hard thing for me to adjust to. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not totally adjusted to it. It's still weird that all of my salad, well, and the other thing is my lettuce doesn't grow when my tomatoes grow. So to have a salad without a tomato, to me, or a cucumber, it is weird. So, you learn to pickle things. So you learn to pickle your cucumbers so that you can have pickled cucumbers on your salad, because that's the only way that you're going to get fresh lettuce and a cucumber is by putting a pickle on your salad. Your root vegetables and things like that grow in the wintertime. And so soups in the winter, yes, you can, carrots, rutabagas, turnips, they grow in the winter. And of course, in the wintertime, we're looking at eating up our potatoes, because the potatoes have been in stores, they're in stores. So soups with potatoes, that's great. But you need to learn how to use your food when it's coming out of your garden, or preserve it. And if you don't know how to can, learning how to can is a great big thing. Water bath canning, pressure canning. And you need to, as it comes out of the garden, are you going to preserve it by canning it, or by freezing it? Having freezer space. I mean, right now we're approaching a season where we need to have a lot of freezer space, because we have a very large animal that's going to be going to freezer camp in our heifer, Billie Jean. And so that's going to be hundreds of pounds of meat that's going to need to find a home in the freezer. So I've been all summer, I haven't been putting things like last summer. I put a lot of zucchini in the freezer. This summer, I've just been pulling vegetables and stuff out of the freezer, trying to get all of them processed to try to make room for this large animal that we're going to be putting in the freezer after she gets processed. So what you can't freeze, can you can it? Can you learn how to can it? A lot of extension offices is a great place to start if you've moved somewhere new. The extension offices a lot of times will have pamphlets, or they'll have information, and if they don't have the answers to your questions, a lot of times they can direct you to somebody that might. So moving to somebody or somewhere completely different, there can be challenges with learning how to do things. Where can you take a sourdough class? Where can you learn how to can? And of course, most of us and most of you that are on here know that YouTube is an excellent source for that. It's been a great source for us to learn how to do new things, and learn how to preserve new things. And we're constantly growing and learning from watching other farmers and homesteaders on YouTube. Roots and Refuge Farm, Whispering Willow Farm, Joe Salatin, obviously he's like the king of all kings. Justin Rhodes, and unfortunately they just got wiped out by one of the hurricanes, as far as they lost a lot of farm. And that man's incredible as far as being genius, and and they will build back, and they will build back better. And his wife is wonderful with the children and all of her medicinal things. And there's also Living Traditions Homestead. That's another one that we watch all the time. So there's a lot of YouTubers on there that are putting out really great information for you to pull from and to learn from. But using the garden, using what is coming out of your farm, being prepared for that, planning for that, and knowing what to do with it. We call it the burden of abundance. When you've got hundreds of pounds of something, whether it be tomatoes, onions, potatoes, or a beef coming in, what are you going to do with that? And are you going to be able to take care of that? And do you have, the big thing for us is, you know, we have the knowledge and the how-to and the drive to do it. And, you know, yeah, we might have to stay up till midnight canning salsa, but we'll do it. Do you have the space? Where are you going to store it? And that's, you know, these are all challenges and things to think about when you decide to grow your own food. You know, if you're going to grow enough salsa for a year, you know, you need to have the storage to put it. If you're going to butcher a cow, you got enough room to store, you know, 1,000 pounds of beef? When we butchered our lambs, do you have enough room? Your kitchen freezer is not going to hold 140 pounds of lamb. It's just not going to do it. So the challenge of where do you put the burden of abundance is on my list. The next category that I have is the idea of homesteading, which much of what you see online and what makes you fall in love with the dream of homesteading and growing your own food is, you know, all of these romantic, you know, photos on Pinterest of you know, the beautiful egg basket, you know, with all the different colors, the brown, the white, the blue, the pink, you know, the eggs. And it's the, you know, the beautiful racks of smoked pork belly that comes out of your smoker, that's the main reason why we bought that smoker. We actually have 2 smokers. But that's the reason why we bought that, is so we can hang slabs of pork belly in it, because we make our own bacon. We tell the butcher, you know, there's 2 things that we tell the butcher when we have a hog butchered, which we haven't gotten into hogs here in Arkansas yet, but we did do it in Oregon. We just haven't gotten the infrastructure up yet, the proper fencing to have hogs. But our butchers don't season they don't do the sausage. We have them just make it into burger. We make our own sausage. Mr. Wonderful, I shouldn't say we, it's all him. We make our own sausage and we do our own bacon with the pork bellies. So whether it be that or, you know, it just be the beautiful looking out, you know, across the pastures with your animals grazing and all of these really beautiful plates of food that, you know, wholesome plates of food. Most often it's, you know, meat and vegetables and maybe a sourdough item coming out of the kitchen. It's all very romantic and beautiful. But it's not always that. Those are the rewards. Those are the rewards for the, you know, the work that goes into it. There's the, just in the line of butchering, you know, you've got to time it to where you're butchering the chickens before they start killing each other, because the roosters they will fight to the death. You got to butcher your cow before it, you know, starts beating up the fences, because, you know, it wants out for us, it wants out to the pasture. And we don't grass finish our beef, we grain finish our beef. Or until the lambs start, you know, screaming and driving you absolutely bonkers because you've been feeding them candy for the last days of their life, and every time they see you, they think that they're going to get, you know, the candy, the sweet mix, or the alfalfa. There's, you know, the picking up of the poop and the disposal of the dead animals. You know, if you've got livestock, you've got dead stock. Those things are unfortunate, and they're not often on a farm or a homestead, but they do happen. And it's not romantic. It's sad and it's awful most times, and it's hard. It's heavy. You know, you've got fixing fences, weeding the garden, the countless hours of moving sprinklers and, you know, and mowing and, you know, doing all of these daily tasks, scrubbing water troughs. To me, that is not romantic. I know for some of you guys love watching me do it, but scrubbing water troughs is not, There's just nothing romantic about it. You know, it's slimy, it stinks, it's gross, and it's just part of the homestead that's not a super fun thing. But it leads to healthy animals, which leads to, the food on our plates tasting better. So don't let yourself, if you have a homestead and you feel like you're facing, well, for me, death comes to mind because it's failure of death. It's when a death happens on your farm, and it's still to this day, even if it's a chicken, it wrecks me. It just, for the day, it ruins my whole day when I lose an animal. And there could be a perfectly explainable, reason for it, or it could be a complete, just random shock. Just a freak accident, or God knows what happens. But, we lose animals, and it's devastating to me. It's not something that I have become numb to. But it happens, and you have to continue on, and that's not why we're doing it. We're doing it because we believe that growing our own food and eating the food that comes off of our farm is a healthier, better, more responsible, wholesome option. Romanticizing it isn't something that just YouTubers or Facebookers do. It's not something that just us people that are on, in the public eye through a screen. It's not, we don't just do it because of that. We do it because it's what makes the hard times worth it. The sunsets when I'm out working on the farm. I mean, even the other night when I was building Billie Jean's last pen, it was kind of a heavy night because it is my beef's last pen that I'm building for her. It was her last move before her final move. And I'm pounding T-posts. I'm tired. The weight of the day is heavy. And the sunset behind my farm is just absolutely beautiful. And I took a minute and I just watched the sun go down. And I cherished it. It's because we see the beauty in these moments. It's because when I moved Billie Jean across the alleyway to the pasture area that she was going to, where her final pen was, and she took a glimpse at that, that hayfield, and just dropped her head and just started mowing down the clover. I stopped and I took about 15 pictures of her because she was just so beautiful there in the sunset, eating the clover, just living her best life. Happy camper. The roosters that come out that I raise in there, and I'm like, what? I've got the puffy-faced rooster that's like a barred rock mixed with probably Araucana or something that makes him have puffy cheeks, and he's rocking my world right now when I go out to the chicken coop. I think he's adorable and beautiful. The tomato the tomato plants that I haven't gotten tied up, that are just doing their own wild thing. I go out there and I'm in awe of the wonder of God and the wonder of how he created this plant that just continues to produce, even though I feel like I'm neglecting it. It's just pumping out the food, and it's beautiful. We see us that do it. The reason why we continue doing it is because we truly do find it beautiful. We truly do find it inspiring. We truly do find that this life brings us closer to God and closer to the earth and closer to being wholesome, good people. We truly believe that. And also in that respect, this lifestyle, especially for me, but for many, this lifestyle is lonely. It's quiet. Now, mind you, quiet's what we wanted. We wanted to get away from the noise. That's why we moved here. That's why we moved out to rural America. The town that we used to live in used to be rural America, and it just got too noisy. And what I mean by noisy, I don't mean we really didn't have a lot of sirens and things like that. We had more than there was 20 years ago. But we weren't by any means in a city. But what I mean is just the noise of people, traffic, and the things that go along with that, you know, the battles of politics and the different, you know, there being too many people of different ideas and too few like-minded people around us. That's how I'm gonna word that. The noise just got unbearable. And a lot of homesteaders around here call it the rat race. You know, the rat race of being a business owner that got too big for my britches. I was way too busy. I was working 16-hour days. And I wanted a quieter, slower lifestyle. I wanted to enjoy my farm more. I wanted to I wanted to have the time to spend 6 hours sitting in a pen with a bottle calf. I wanted to have the time to be able to say, be off work in time to be able to say, I'm going to sit on my porch and enjoy a beverage and watch the sun go down. We wanted that. We wanted the quiet, but it is lonely. And in fact, when Mr. Wonderful comes home, he works 6 months out of the year away from the farm. All summer long he's gone, and when he comes home, it takes him a while before he realizes that I'm talking to him, because I talk to the dogs. I talk to the animals because they're the only companionship that I have here for 6 months out of the year. And that part of it, it can get lonely. It can get almost too quiet. I'm not going to say too quiet because I love it. But it is, we are out there working much of the time, scrubbing water troughs, cleaning stalls, feeding animals by ourselves. We're alone. We're not in an office working with people all around us. There's not people there to bounce ideas off of. On a daily basis, we're alone. Another challenge that I have as far as the idea of homesteading and the romantic part of it that a lot of people don't realize the consequence of that is we're married to our farms. We leaving and we see our friends going on cruises and all these fancy vacations and doing that. It's not impossible. It's possible. But it's dang hard and really expensive. For us to leave our farm it's an act of God. I mean, it's a big deal for us to go. We have to board our dogs. We have to hire a farm sitter. A lot of times I have to hire somebody to, work in the garden. It's tough getting out, making sure that all of the feed is in place for all of the animals so that, they don't run out of food while we're gone. Making sure that all of the emergency contacts are in order and all the emergency contacts know what decisions I would make on each animal in life or death situations. The fence that portion of fence that you've been looking at thinking, yeah, I should probably fix it, but you know what, I'll do it when the cow gets out. You need to do it before you leave, because I guarantee you that cow will find that patch of fence when you're gone if you don't. Making sure that your water systems are in place for your garden. There's just, leaving the farm is hard. It's pretty rare. It's not impossible. Money helps. If you have money, to pay house sitters, farm sitters, and you have good farm and house sitters. That's the other key element, is finding good people to watch your farm. Then it's possible, but it's not easy. You're married to your farm. Okay, I have a few just last kind of. And this is more of in the realm of morale and just encouragement and I guess more on the emotional emotional side of it, you know, kind of tips is, the first thing is that you're going to have a lot of, there's a lot of judgment out there. There's a lot of negative people out there. There's a lot of people that are going to think you're nuts. Don't let the world dictate what you want your homestead to look like. Everybody's different. Your homestead does not have to look like my homestead. My homestead does not have to look like your homestead. Do the best you can with what you have. And remember that Rome wasn't built in a day, and your homestead doesn't have to either. Bargain shop if you need to. If you can afford to buy all new, then that's great. But if you can't, you know, use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without. Just do the best that you can. And keep your mind open and your heart open to new ideas and to structural criticism that comes from a good place. The farm industry, big and small, is constantly changing. There are always new things to learn. There are always conventions to go to. There are always new ebooks out there. There are always online seminars to go to. There are always new YouTubers, homesteaders, and farmers that are, you know, that are sharing things online and putting themselves out there for educational purposes. So always keep your mind and your heart open to learning new things or to applying things that you didn't know previously to your homestead and seeing how they work. And while you're doing that, keep your judgment in check to others' lessons that you are learning. Many of us are making little to no money while putting our farms, our lives, and our homesteads out here in the public world to help you grow and to share our lessons in hopes that you won't make the same mistakes that we did. So keep your judgment in check and know that everybody's situations are not the same, and being kind will always get you further than being unkind. And the very last thing is, if it doesn't make you happy, guys, don't do it. This life is way too much work to do things that make you unhappy. With that, that is my list, my long, comprehensive list. I hope that you guys got something out of this video. It was a joy for me to do, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Yours truly.